the Community Foundation has done to date. It's our 25th anniversary, and this is our third and final webinar on the city that philanthropy built, the past, present, and future of philanthropy in Long Beach. And we have just got some wonderful people here today that I'm really excited to introduce to you. I'm going to start with our panelists and move over to our moderator. Some are in the studio with us today at the Long Beach Post, and others are dialing in. And please open up the chat and give us your feedback. Tell us who's here. Tell us your association with the Community Foundation or any of our panelists, and we want to hear from you. So our first panelist over here to my right is Summer Temple. She is the owner of the Temple Family Enterprise, which encompasses Dawn Temple Storage, which you see a lot throughout Long Beach Used Store and Lock, and other commercial real estate properties within the city. Summer was raised in Long Beach, and after college, she went to work for her father's organization as the office manager at Dawn Temple Storage. And Dawn thankfully involved Summer from a very young age with the family business, and she spent many school vacations at the Dawn Temple Storage, answering phones, writing contracts, filing and learning about the business and self-storage industries from the ground up. And later she would become a member of the National Self-Storage Association and the California Self-Storage Association. Her community involvement spans all throughout the city, from active with the Business Association, Long Beach City College Foundation. She's on the Citizens Oversight Committee for Long Beach City College. And she's also involved with Play Long Beach, the Chamber's Women Business Council, Fairfield YMCA, Community Action Team, Hero Squad, Free Mom Hugs, which is a great organization too. She started actually the part of the SoCal chapter, and she's a member of the Rotary Club of Long Beach and the Executives Association of Long Beach. So very involved, and we're really glad to have you here today. Next we have Mandy Johnson, and Mandy is a real estate investor in Southern California. She oversees property management, maintenance, and development of a portfolio consisting of retail and industrial properties with a primary focus on housing. And prior to stepping in the family business, so something Summer and Mandy have in common, she passionately worked in the nonprofit industry as a fundraiser and a grant maker. So for those charities that are joining us today, you've got a peer here, and maybe many of you recognize her from Operation Jumpstart. She also worked for national organizations including the Toy Industry Foundation and the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Amanda volunteers a lot, and specifically on the Orange County Community Foundation, as well as for the Long Beach Community Foundation, reviewing a lot of our grants. And so we appreciate her time here, and both Summer and Mandy are very charitable and have funds at the Long Beach Community Foundation, and that's a number of reasons why we invited them here today to talk about what the future of philanthropy looks like. A lot of the conversations we've had prior to this have been about, you know, what are, in your generation, what are some of your challenges? What are some of the things you want to get done in the future? How is it going to be different? And this is really a great group to approach about that. We also have Tasha Hunter joining us, I think from across the street at another studio, so if we could get her dialed in here. Tasha is the executive director of the Uptown Business Improvement District and has done an amazing job up there. She's the founder of the Wiggins Hunter Consulting Group, specializing in public speaking, community engagement, and creative business development, amongst a lot of other things that are related to cultural development and planning. And she has extensive experience and specializations as it relates to outreach at the Liberal Arts and PCC campus at Long Beach City College. So Vikings are in the house today. And Tasha has done a lot of programs and events within the greater Los Angeles area. So she specializes in Long Beach, but her reach is far and vast. And she is currently the president of the African American Cultural Center of Long Beach, and she does their visioning process and a wide range of things having to do with the future of that very exciting cultural center. So it's in good hands. She's also has served as a board president for the Arts Council of Long Beach, as well as the Cultural Heritage Commissioner Service and the chair of the Long Beach Opera's Community Advisory Committee. So deep roots here, and has a number of awards, including one from Ricardo Laura, and I love this title, the Award of Magnificence from the City Council. That is something to aspire to, and we're just so glad you could join us here today, Tasha. Thanks for being here. Our last panelist I'll introduce is Sentari Minor, and he is a really interesting person, not necessarily local to Long Beach, which is exactly why we wanted to invite him here today. He's dialing in from Phoenix, Arizona, and he is the head of strategy for evolvedMD. He's at the forefront of healthcare innovation with a scope of work that includes strategy, growth, and branding, culture, and coaching. And prior to be involved with evolvedMD, he worked with some of the nation's most prominent curious CEOs and entrepreneurs, advising on things like philanthropy, policy, and everything social good. He was the regional director of Gen Next, spanning 3 different cities, and strengthened social enterprises as the director at venture philanthropy firm Social Venture Partners. Quite an extensive resume, but what I'll add is that he's really passionate about brands doing good in the world, doing good for the world, and speaks nationally on governance, leadership, capacity building, social entrepreneurship, and engaging high-profile leaders in the dialogue of today. So you can see we've got a lot of different people here today that are going to navigate how we're going to talk about philanthropy in the future from very different perspectives. And last but not least, it's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our moderator, Richard Tollefson, who many of you know locally and nationally. He's been involved with philanthropy for 3 decades and is a wealth of knowledge, and we're just so glad he could be here in the studio with us in person today. He established the Phoenix Philanthropy Group nearly 20 years ago, and it's fundraising, advancing management experience, and now, after 3 decades, he's successfully helped strengthen nonprofits and many other organizations. The Phoenix Philanthropy Group partners with organizations and individuals to build strategies and resources to optimize their global societies. He's involved with a number of civic and nonprofit organizations, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today. And I'll leave it to you, Richard.
All right. Well, it's great to be here, and to all of you who are viewing, we have about 110 people joining us today, and you see us in the studio, and Tasha and Sentari are joining us from remote locations. The topic of our discussion today is the future of philanthropy and the next generation of leadership in philanthropy, volunteerism, and social change. And we are going to talk largely around the millennial group as well as the zennials, or the Oregon trails, as I just learned about this. So we're talking about people basically who are 25 to 44 as the next gen leaders who will be leading us into the future with our nonprofit organizations and philanthropy. So as everybody knows, 2020 saw a big disruption in philanthropy and social change with COVID, with social and racial justice issues. But during that time, there was an increase in philanthropy. We reached $471 billion worth of philanthropy in 2020. It increased nearly $23 billion, or over 5%. And that's continuing in 2021 as well. One hallmark of 2020 is that people gave in the moment. They gave in response to the changing world about them. They gave more money to people in need. They gave more money to social justice organizations, educational institutions, and directly to healthcare. They also demonstrated more in the streets. Their voices were raised and people were activated. And there was more personal engagement. A lot of people couldn't volunteer in 2020 because we couldn't get together as groups, but there was a lot of one-on-one encouragement and support, either through the phone or through a screen door, whatever it may be. But that support, that person-to-person support, was a real hallmark of 2020 and continuing into 2021. So there's more visibility, there's more activity. But with that, we also know that philanthropy in the United States is largely the realm of largely white and affluent folks. There's a debate about issues of wealth and privilege and setting the agenda for the community and for society. With diverse communities, however, tend to give at a higher percentage of their income to nonprofits and to social causes. So as the population in general changes, so too must the demographics of philanthropy and volunteer leadership. The diverse and younger group has different needs, different demands, and different expectations. and they face leadership with a different perspective. They look at community issues and solutions in a different way. They're everyday change makers, but with a big agenda for change. So our questions today are around how can the impact of the next generation of leaders be leveraged and optimized, and what do nonprofits need to do to respond to this new generation or anticipate the new generation? So with that, we're going to start with some opening statements, and in that we will start first with Summer. If you could give us an opening statement about how you kind of relate to this topic today and what brings you here today.
Well, my name is Summer Temple, and I come from a family that has given back to Long Beach for many years. My father started the Don Temple Family Charitable Foundation that exclusively funds Long Beach nonprofits. And we also own and operate Don Temple Storage here in Long Beach. Growing up, my father always said to me, as a business owner in the city, you have a duty to give back to the city and be involved in the community that your business supports. And I watched him do that through his actions. Yes, he gave generously to different causes in the city, but more importantly, I watched him give his time and his energy and his love back to the city in new and creative ways. And he inspired me then to find my own path and my own way to give back in ways that are impactful, meaningful, and directly impact the people that we are trying to help. I also am a mother, and I am focused on how can I pass on our family's love of philanthropy onto my children. So when it's their time to serve on the board, they serve with pride of what our family has accomplished in the community and with a look to the future on what they can do.
Thank you, that's terrific. Mandy, you want to take it?
Sure. I was excited to be part of this panel. When Marcelle brought it up to me, I was laughing. We talked about the future of philanthropy, and I thought we were going to talk about our kids. But I was like, oh, we're the future. I love being a young person. But I did find that, as you mentioned during the intro, I spent the bulk of my career in nonprofit. And once I was finally able to serve on a board, which was something that had been really like a philanthropic aspiration of mine, that once I got in the boardroom, it wasn't what I had expected. I didn't see a lot of people around the table that looked like me, and I didn't feel like I was being utilized in the way that I had hoped, especially with coming from having a career on the other side. And so I was excited to sort of talk about what happens when our generation tries to participate in philanthropy at that level. And I feel like at the best, we are underutilized, and at the worst, it can even be patronized. And so I'm excited because I think that needs to change for many reasons, so that there are more people participating and everybody gets a seat. And I'm excited that the next generation of philanthropists are here.
Great. We'll toss it to Tasha.
Hi there. Thank you, Tasha Hunter. And my relationship with this topic is, Summer had me thinking about the childhood component. And I'll say the foundation for me personally was being a Girl Scout. Sounds very simple, but the work that we had to do as a Girl Scout, going out and doing service, really helped lay a proper foundation. And also Catholic service hours. They were required and they were very important. And it also, it led a foundation of the work that I have done and the work that, my parents have instilled within me with my father, God bless him. He's gone forth, community servant, as well as, a military person and a police officer, and seeing all the things that we did in that regard, I naturally brought into the professional world, especially in this creative world. A lot of my work has been in the creative sector, but also film. Film is where the creative and the business both come together. And so I'm excited about this topic. I have so much to say, and thank you, Marcelle, for reading off those things. I'm also I also teach at Cal State Long Beach. So with that, just staying in tune and in alignment with a lot of next generation folks, I kind of have my ear to the pulse of the next. So I'm happy to be here. Can't wait to dig in.
Great. And Sentari, well, over to you.
Well, thank you guys for letting me join the Long Beach community. Sentari Minor based in Phoenix. Thinking about this, I'm excited to talk about how the next generation is really reimagining social impact. My career has been rooted in the nonprofit sector, and about 5 years ago went over to the for-profit side and really thinking about social impact and corporate philanthropy. So I'm excited to have the lens of how do private sector leaders come forth and support the work that you all are doing? How can private sector leaders come forth and really work alongside folks and support nonprofits to do this really, really impactful work? So I'm excited for that conversation. And as an aside, I'm former chair of the YNPN National, which is the Young Nonprofit Professionals Network. And so have my ear to the ground to a lot of the things that are happening just in the nonprofit sector and things that professionals who are working in it day in and day out are just demanding of employers, of foundations, of corporations. And so hopefully we get to talk about that a little bit today. But excited for this.
Great. All right, thank you all. We've got some questions that we're going to pose to everybody, but if you have questions, please share them. Marcelle, how are they sharing them again?
So far, we've got a lot of people on the chat, and they're introducing themselves and saying hello to the panelists.
Great.
But I'll be monitoring that for questions. So.
All right. So our first question is, how do you see generational attitudes toward philanthropy, board service and leadership, community service and social change evolving? And how is it different? How do you perceive that it's different from that of your parents? And with that, we'll start with Summer. We'll go in the same order that we did before. So Summer.
When I think of philanthropy through the span of generations, I think of the old adage, if you give a man a fish, you will feed him for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, you will feed him for a lifetime. Historically, philanthropy has been focused on immediate results instead of long-term solutions. But in the last decade, we have seen the philanthropic pendulum swinging in an entirely new direction. The previous generations, baby boomers and Gen X, they were focused on giving everyone a fish. But millennials and the new generation are driven by a global sense of responsibility, and they want to make an impact in their community, in their school, in their country, in the world. And they want to do, the Case Foundation's 2015 Millennial Impact Report reported that in 2015, 84% of millennials contributed to nonprofits, while 70% of them contributed and volunteered time. Both millennials and the generation below them have an innate desire, both millennials and the generation below them approach philanthropy completely different than generations before them. While the younger generations do have many of the same values and morals as their parents, they have an innate desire to want to do things their own way. In fact, this desire is what drives them in making decisions such as where to work, what businesses to patronize, what charities to donate their time and money to. And in some cases, they make it a career choice. Now, financially, millennials really have had the roughest road to endure. They came to age in the Great Recession. They entered the workforce during one of the worst economic downturns in decades. They face mounting student debt costs, skyrocketing healthcare costs, and housing costs that are just out of their reach. However, millennials are posed to inherit from the baby boomer generation $30 trillion. This will make them the largest generation with expendable growth and income to give. This makes them potentially the group that will become large-scale donors and that will be committed, long-term, engaged, and loyal for a lifetime to the different organizations that they commit to.
That's great. A lot of information in there. Thank you. Mandy?
I will speak to sort of like the question about how am I different from my parents. When I started getting involved in philanthropy, it was sort of like Tasha said very early on. It was service hours. I went to a Catholic school, and we had a requirement that I felt really got me into it right away. So I felt I got the bit by the philanthropy bug early. I found like I was my best self when I was volunteering and helping people. And then I turned it into a career. And I remember when I started working for the National MS Society, my grandma asked me, how long are you going to keep helping people? Like, this was just like more volunteer hours. And I was like, they are paying me here. This is a job. This is a career path. This is a passion, and it can be a job as well. And I think with her generation, philanthropy wasn't even something that she had thought about. Her setting up a donor advised fund was actually a tax strategy. It was more of a, how do we not give Uncle Sam our money? We can do this. So when I took it over, people would say, well, what would your grandma want? I'm like, that's not even in the equation here. I get to ask what I want. How would I like to make a difference? What's important to me? What change do I want to be a part of? And it's very different from her generation or my mom's generation. I feel like my mom gave based on, she would support research for diseases that she didn't want to get. And, or the arts. And that's traditional for that age group. And now we're seeing focus to be, I think, more urgent is the overall. I think that our generation wants to help as many people as they can right now as best they can. And that's the difference. I think this is not something that is like part of our retirement plans. Like, I'm going to make a lot of money and then pick a few charities that I can really get involved with down the road. It's part of your work life. It's part of your family life. It's making philanthropy a part of your everyday. And now, because I think setting up an endowment for the arts is a different mentality than, I don't want California to burn this fall. And that's what our generation is charged with, and that's what we're trying to fix.
Yep. Great. All right, Tasha, how about you?
All right. Well, I love the responses that both ahead of me responded to. I'm gonna just build on that and looking at the previous generations and the source of their giving is this a strong organization? Digging into the financials, is this the cause that I want to? How are they going to secure these funds, protect those funds? And with the baby, sometimes I don't like using generational terms because you may be born of a certain era, a baby boomer, but feel like a millennial. There has to be a name for that. And then there's my generation. I would call this the X. I feel like through all the hard work and that our previous generation did, the X is, we are here. We give when we give, where we give. And then there's the generations behind us. Let me go back to our and I'm going to speak culturally. I don't speak for all Black folks, African American people, but I'll say a strong source of philanthropy and giving within the African American community is definitely to the church. The church was a place, and that really is not looked at as a level of philanthropy, but what I've noticed in recent days of the church is they'll come in and have organizations that they uphold and trust and ask members to give funds to that organization because the institution, the religious institution, has vouched for them, so to speak. So this is a huge method of giving. So as far as our younger generations, it is the now. They want to know that the work that's being done is going to relevant causes. And that right there is very important. It is very special. And also they want to recognize that their time is looked at as something. Their time, how is time tangible? How can we quantify all these hours that I'm giving into something? May not be the money, but it's, something that we're going to have to explore of how things are conceptualized.
Great. Thank you. Sentari?
Yeah, thinking about the idea of the question, which is how's the next generation kind of evolving as it relates to philanthropy, social change, leadership. I think it's important to realize that I think the next generation is being much more intentional. This is much more ingrained, and people are demanding social change and social impact in very, very, very explicit ways. So there was a report last year that Edelman put out right after the passing of George Floyd, called A Universal Demand for Change. And I just put that in the chat. And so what it did, it outlined that brands, companies are now being demanded to have people who care. It's a moral obligation for companies. It is a moral obligation for leaders to actually impact social change, to be aware. And it's also true for foundation and grant-making organizations. I think that gone are the days where a company or a foundation or a nonprofit could say, like, we don't do that, right? That's not what we do. Leave that up to more community organizations. And right now, every nonprofit and every foundation is finding that because of this next generation, they have to be community centric. The end user has to be part of the conversation. And I think this next generation is the group driving that change.
Perfect. Lots to break apart there, and hopefully we'll have time to come back to some of those issues. Let's talk to Summer and Tasha about this next question. What are some of the big social change issues that you think are before us, that are some of the critical things that we look to address and we solve, and how is that reflected in your philanthropy and your activism?
I'll let you go first this time.
Oh, I am not answering this question.
Oh, sorry.
I mean,
Tosh. I will let Tosh take this one first.
Okay, Tasha.
Okay, so I'm going to tackle the first part. The critical things that are looking to be addressed right here, right now. Sentari really did pinpoint that with the social movement, things that have to change. And I'll say this, with the effort of not just one particular group, but with these millennials, with these Z-Gens, they are all coming together side by side, brother and sister, realizing that their amplified voices can help lift their brown, Black brothers and sisters. And that's something that, something I've said in the past is the Underground Railroad did not exist based upon people that look just like me, right? For that. And so this is what we're seeing right here, right now. And these are the issues that the younger generations want to make sure that it's worthwhile, that it's helping, that it can help expand ideas. And in a sense, it is a way of making up for past losses. So the second part of your question, can you repeat that again?
What are the biggest social change issues that are before us, and how does that impact your philanthropy, your volunteer work, your social activism?
How does it affect my volunteer work? And I feel as if it has been, not to sound cliche, but just a little bit of the wind beneath me pushing forward what I've always done personally, and helping to uplift voices of the voiceless, or lift the voices of those that don't know how to speak on their behalf, that level of advocacy. It's nice to not have to be a small cohort or group of folks that have been doing this work for their lifetimes. It's nice to have that additional help. It's nice to finally have people awaken, or become woke, however you want to say it, to help do the work and see the importance of the work. And it took a little shaking up of some things for folks to recognize. And I'm glad that they're recognizing, not just by words, but also recognizing by, let me see how I can use my platform to help push these movement forwards. I can't list a whole bunch of different things, but I have them in my head. I know exactly what it is. And so do we here. Realizing, but I'll speak from my perspective, realizing that art is a powerful form of creating and bridging and engaging and implementing change. It is art that helped get us through things like pandemics. To be able to see, folks like DJ Nice host these, D-Nice host these Instagram DJ sets and parties to give people a reason, right, to engage in arts and creation of murals as a result of some social unrest and all kinds of different things. So that's the one that I don't want to monopolize the time. I'll definitely chime in more later.
All right, back to you, Summer.
Well, I think some of the biggest opportunities before us is, as Tasha and Sentari have said, is how can we bridge the gap between the old school way of philanthropy and how the new generations want to direct philanthropy. And I think that we really need to do that through engagement. Like Mandy was saying about her experience joining a board. We need to figure out how to engage the younger generation. They really prefer to be approached first for their time and expertise rather than how much money they can give. And I think what we need to do is look at our boards and realize that board positions are no longer there just for name recognition status or how much money you can give. That board member positions need to create a symbiotic relationship between the staff of the foundation or the organization and their board members. And therefore, the board members need to expand and include more ideas and problem solvers, because that is what the younger generation are. They're problem solvers. They want to get into the thick of the problems and figure out long-term solutions. They want a place at the table, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to open up the table, make it more inclusive, invite more people in, and recognize that in the next decade or so, philanthropy is going to completely change. We've already seen it here in Long Beach. You know, let's look at how technology has impacted philanthropy with Long Beach Gives. Long Beach Gives offers the younger generation a way to connect, to locate, research, donate, and then see for themselves directly through social media, directly the impact that their gift makes. And that's important to them. So we need to look to how can we engage these younger board members? How can we listen to their ideas? And how can we look to the future to make change through social impacts and growth?
The next question is for Sentari, but we've addressed some of these issues. Everybody touched upon them. And so while Sentari's going to go first in answering this, kind of reiterate some of the key points that you've talked about. So let's have a little dialogue about this. So the question is the traditional model of board leadership still valid? Is it still productive? That traditional model being that which the board is focused on vision and strategic planning, governance and fiduciary accountability, and fundraising. And you expect 100% participation in philanthropy, that they give, at levels indicative of their leadership role within the organization, that they participate in committee meetings and structured board meetings. It's time intensive, it's money intensive. So is that still legit? Is that what we want to look at going forward? Or again, you've all touched on it a little bit, but Sentari, why don't you jump into it first, and then if anybody else has things to add, let's talk about that.
Yeah, wonderful. So with this next generation leadership and engagement to drive social change, that's just table stakes, right? So I think you'll have a big class of folks that want to be more engaged at the leadership and board level. That's all to say, I think the traditional model is still valid. It just has to be perhaps augmented a bit. I chaired for 4 organizations by the time I was 30. I now sit on the boards of a large healthcare organization and the largest nonprofit in Arizona, and I can say that generational diversity has been super helpful in helping those organizations move forward. And board members will always have the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, the duty of obedience. And I kind of refuse to believe that being inclusive or innovative is mutually exclusive of everyone still being required to give their time, talent, and treasure. I think you just have to have those folks give it in authentic ways. So organizations have to be open to having those people show up in the way that works for them. So how they give, what they give, just has to be open and much more inclusive in those different ways. I'll also say that the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece is going to be something that I think is here to stay as it relates to organizations institutionalizing that. I've been very, very very surprised and impressed by the work that Goodwill of Arizona is doing in actually naming a board seat for DEI and then ingraining that throughout the organization with a very robust budget around it. So I think as more and more employees of nonprofits demand that, as more and more donors demand that, you're going to see a lot of those things.
Well, this is a really tough question that a lot of our clients deal with. And, of the current generation, meaningful engagement of board members is a challenge now. As a new profile of people step into those leadership positions, it's just going to continue to be a challenge. And one of the things that we talk a lot to our clients about is that, in essence, a board experience needs to be a curated experience. It needs to be concierge. You need to sit down and understand what your board members have to offer, as you've all been talking about, and one size doesn't fit all. And now that can be labor intensive, it can be costly, but I think that's the way you're going to optimize leadership, board leadership going forward. So I just want to go around the room, the virtual and the physical room. If there's one key success factor to nonprofits helping their boards be successful with a new generation of leadership coming up, what's the one key success factor that you think is most important?
Engagement. Engagement would be the number one, and to realize that the younger generations want to get their hands dirty. They want to roll up their sleeves. They want to be involved in it. Walking into a board meeting and having things decided and you just kind of rubber stamp them, or you're a bobblehead, that's really not going to work for the younger generation. They want to be involved. They want their opinions heard. They want to be a part of what's going on. So engagement and a welcoming atmosphere is really what I think is important.
I think you said it really well earlier when you were talking about it being like a relationship. This is not just a one-sided, this needs to work for everybody. I think accessibility, not just in terms of who is allowed at that boardroom, but how you get there. I found that Zoom was really helpful. I was more engaged last year than I could be in previous years. I could go to more site visits. I could listen to more meetings. A lot of times I'm catching up on my own time as a recording, but I can do it and I can still be there. And I think this generation is raising their family and hustling in their career. And so if you can just make it easier so that the when you can help is not such a small window, then I think more people can participate.
To that one as well. It is definitely important that we have a level of intentionality, especially with younger generations. It's like realizing and recognizing just because we may be their quote unquote elder, we have to have a mutual level of respect. And that's something I've known. I have millennial children and I have Z-Gen children, and I teach a lot of those in the classroom as well at the university level. And that's something that it is okay for us and for older generations to be able to say, can you please help me and mentor me in this regard? And if we change that language, rather than looking like because you are older or an elder, that you can't be mentored by somebody younger, I think that dynamic and that changing of language would help shift some attitudes, and also rephrasing some of the things that we say, like, you should, you need to. This younger generation is not going to be told what they should and what they need to. You have to say, what do you think about? And I've noticed that in myself with the young people in my home, like, I need to, I have to, but this is me. And so as we want to bring them in and pass the baton, we have to be willing to pass the baton. Can't hold on to that baton forever. We have to realize that our next generations, we have to give and share this information that we have within us to help them grow. And also they can do the same and input and pour into, what it is to help push this whole movement forward in a board, an organization, philanthropy, etc.
Nothing that
mutual respect. I love the phrase "open up to win." So you can do your work anytime. And virtually really does help you get some experience. Pass the baton. Don't just hand it. You got to really pass it off. And then no bobbleheads. That is a good one. So, Marcelle, do you want to see if there's some questions you want to ask? I've got another one, but let's turn it over
why
to you.
don't you go ahead?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, this one is just kind of a broad one, but let's just talk about what's been your most fulfilling philanthropic experience and what has been the most challenging. And I start with you all the time. I don't want you to feel pressure. So, Sentari, we're starting with you. So, what is your most fulfilling philanthropic experience and what has been the most challenging?
Oh, thrilling philanthropic experience. I would say right now I chair an organization, Adelante Healthcare, so it's a federally qualified health center, and it's been so fulfilling because the work really does require 50% of the board to be patients, so end users, and people from the community who are engaged in the work, and then just seeing the impact of having great access to care and how that can really transform a community. So I've loved the work, and it's truly a board that has, what I love is not only ethnically, racially diverse, but generationally diverse. So you can have someone under 30 and someone over 60 talking about expansion strategy of a healthcare organization, right? And seeing how those two people talk it through and seeing the expertise of each and how the diversity of thought in each is really impactful. So that's been my most fulfilling that I can say to date. Most challenging. I don't think I have any particular organization or experience, but it has been challenging being part of organizations, and to what Tasha was talking about, being the youngest person there and being completely dismissed without taking into account any background, both professionally, education-wise, whatever that might be, or coming in and realizing that actually I'm not going to be utilized in a meaningful way. And so I say that would be the most challenging.
Tasha, how about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna bounce it right on back and echo what Sentari said as far as some of the challenges, being not having all the experience that you brought in internationally looked at as relevant or important because of age, right? I'm straddling dearly before I cross that threshold into the half century mark, but still it's not, the elder component yet. As far as rewarding, I will say, yikes. I'm pretty sure that there's something that has been very rewarding. I think it's about to approach me as I'm about to enter an organization that is on the giving end of funds to help with historic preservation here in the city of Long Beach. And I'm just excited to be able to continue or to do that work. So I think that is upon me.
All right, Mandy.
Rewarding, I would say, was probably my very first volunteer experience I spoke about that sort of got me into philanthropy. I was a camp counselor for developmentally disabled adults, and it was a 1-week summer camp. So the families would drop their adult children off, and then you were assigned a camper to look after. And that was just to be in charge of somebody, and then to have the family come back and realize what a gift you had given them, that these are their kids who they never get the opportunity to just have someone else in their care. And the families would come back feeling so much lighter, and the kids would have this wonderful experience of camp, and to just live that philanthropy, to have offered that to somebody, was a high that I think I've been chasing ever since I was 16. Just to keep that going was the reward for me. And then just that feeling that we all belong to each other, and how do you just keep that going? Challenging, I think I touched on from the experience of just trying to get more engaged. When my daughter was born, I tried to find a philanthropy here locally that was taking care of children in Long Beach. That sort of adage that there's no such thing as other people's children. So really wanting to help other kids in Long Beach as I was becoming a parent. And I did a donation drive for my daughter's first birthday. I did a site visit tour. I introduced myself. I went to their fundraisers. I offered to volunteer my time, and like nothing, and no engagement from the other end. And you just sort of feel like, well, I'm not going to chase you if you don't see that there's capacity here. And I've talked to friends just sort of in preparation for this meeting today who have had the same experience. And that's the challenge where I'm like, I don't know who you're waiting for some old white guy to walk through the door and make a difference in your organization, but I can help you if you were to give me the chance. And that's just the challenge that I continue to face at this part.
Okay. Summer?
Well, definitely for me, the most rewarding is an annual event that pre-COVID happened with Justin Rudd and the community action team called Operation Easter Basket. I grew up in Long Beach and Belmont Shore. Those were my stomping grounds, and that's where the event takes place. And I love this event because it is about creating Easter baskets and giving it out to different nonprofits and groups like the Rescue Mission to pass out into the community. But why it's rewarding for me is during those couple of days that we are filling the baskets, I just love watching the community come together. You know, for instance, Lowell students will make hundreds of baskets, and the fire department will come and walk them down to the church to drop them off. You know, you have people just popping in to do this, to do that. You need this, I'll run to the store. You know, we had a lot of the Home Depot workers. They were one of the biggest people benefiting from the baskets. They came to the event, and without anyone asking, they started breaking down boxes. They started saying, we know where to take them, we'll take care of it. And people at this event, they just give and give and give. You know, it's not like, what can I do? It's like, I see a need and I'm jumping in right there. And as a grown-up, to look at the community I grew up in and to see all these different venues come together to create this event where thousands of Easter baskets are made and given out to the community, it's just one of the best experiences I have all year round.
Great.
That's a nice tie-up for, you know, Long Beach truly is the city that Philanthropy built. We have so much charitable giving in this city, and that's why I wanted to initiate this conversation, and so it's initiated and it will keep going because we have wonderful leadership in this town, wonderful board of directors who have been involved with charities for decades. And the thing that we hear at the Community Foundation from, you know, in a leadership philanthropy position is that boards and charities are kind of waiting for what's next. And you heard Summer say $30 trillion being passed down. You heard Mandy say that, you know, she struggles to be engaged in boards, and she's not alone in that. That I've seen a lot of that happen in our community. When our staff and board talked about, you know, our 25th anniversary and what are we going to do, and it's a pandemic, we really thought it would be important to give a gift back to the community and really talk about this issue and this concern about how people give are really going to change. And charities, you have got to start thinking about this and preparing and be more flexible. Some of the things we heard, you know, are the engagement, the intentionality, mutual respect. For your boards and for those joining us today, serving on boards, don't just say you want to engage, you know, younger people on your board. Actually create a plan to do it. And because from where we sit at kind of the 30,000 foot level of charitable giving, we know that charitable giving is going to change. We know that the discretionary income and how people give is going to change. That traditional focus of, is my money I'm giving you, is it sustainable, and what are you spending the money on, is less important to the next generations coming behind that say, I don't care so much about that, I want to just see my direct impact on what's going on, and I want to see it immediately, and I want to be involved. And so really the model is going to change in the future, whether we like it or not. So here it comes. In terms of kind of wrapping up today, I did want to address one of the questions and then close out. There's, I believe it's from the Archstone Foundation, and this is more directed to the Community Foundation. So I'll answer it and welcome any additional input from Sentari, Tasha, or the other panelists here. But it asks, how did our grant-making approach change during the face of COVID? And this is a really great question and addresses the how people are giving, because we saw donations from $20 all the way up and through $100,000, $200,000, and everything in between. And we saw the community come together so quickly that we processed the same amount of donations we might in a year within a few short months. And in doing so, our mission was to get the money out immediately to those most in need. And there was our challenge, to answer your question. The challenge was, sure, we know the charities that do excellent work in the community and we regularly grant to, but we had to take extra steps to learn, the newer charities, the smaller charities that are working on the block level, working with the churches, those trusted districts and block groups and entities that communities trust, that individuals trust, and could go and share what their needs were, and to really, rapid fire get that money out to help immediately. And with that, I want to thank everybody who donated to the Coronavirus Relief Fund and all the 89 plus charities that stepped up to the front lines in the city, really came together. And to say that we changed our process was an understatement, because we really had to go virtual, and we had to do extra digging for those smaller charities that are doing impactful work but may not have a fancy website and may not have a really big board of directors. And so we had to get to know them real quick to make sure that our dollars were going and matching donor intention. So I hope I answered that correctly. And it's interesting to hear, everybody's feedback, because one of the things that you all are talking about, because of course, Community Foundation, we want to know, well, what are our next steps? How are we going to be involved with this if people are giving differently? And I'm hearing that most of you have been impacted by somebody in your life, whether it was a parent or a mentor or somebody. And so I would implore the people that are on here, and I'm seeing a lot of your names and know a lot of you, you're on boards or you're a young person trying to enter this world and be impactful. Have those conversations with people you think are interested. Return phone calls, make time, be a mentor, open yourself to be menteed. Like Tasha said, if somebody says you need to do this or you should do that, just put that in the back of your mind as something to consider. And same way, if the translation isn't coming to somebody who's more in the realm of traditional giving, open yourself up for flexibility. Something will have to be done there. And maybe some of our charities will come together in the months and years to be able to really receive the what's coming, because it sounds like a lot of rolling up your sleeves. It sounds like a lot of different types of giving, and there's certainly some challenges there. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming today. It's been wonderful. Please continue to engage with the Community Foundation, the Phoenix Philanthropy Group. Thank you so much, Richard, for coming, and for Summer, and for Mandy, and of course for Sentari out there in Phoenix, and Tasha. Wonderful to have you. Everyone's perspective was so much appreciated today. And I'm Marcelle Epley. I'm the president and CEO of the Long Beach Community Foundation. It's been an honor to hear from you all today and share this information with you as part of our 25th anniversary of the Long Beach Community Foundation.